wrong with you? Give them money! Give us money so we can give it to them! Do it now! Get off your couch and do it! Do it now!
Hey, it's me, Narrative, and I have watched Transformers 1 and it was great. One would say that it came very close to being perfect. But before I share my thoughts, I'll give you a brief rundown of the movie. The movie starts with your typical fetch quest. I know, I was like that too. Believe me, I bemoaned at the sight of yet another MacGuffin hunt. And yes, this one kind of fuels the first act, but don't worry, it gets turned on its head real fast once it's over with. It's at this point that the movie shows us the world of Cybertron, which has a case system with the miners being at the lowest possible level. At least that's what Orion knows at the start. Now, Orion Pax is part of this group of Cybertronians, as opposed to him being an archivist, although in the movie, he does open up with breaking in one of the archives in order to find out more information about the matrix of leadership. He does this to prove that there's more than meets the eye with them. And to prove that, he joins the Iacon 5000 alongside a reluctant D-16. The movie makes it very clear that these two characters are the very core of the film, and the scenes involving them are the highlights. However, I find it weird how the movie paces their relationship, because there is a shift near the end of the second and third acts that I felt was too abrupt. But before I get to that, there are still a few more key characters to the conflict that I need to get to. So because of their behavior, Orion and D-16 get sent down to 10 levels lower than they thought was possible, level 50, or sub-level 50, where they meet
Badassatron. We're gonna call you B.
B127, or B for short, is a lonely bot that has gone a bit insane after 50 cycles of staring at garbage, and he is the film's comic relief. Sadly to me, he is definitely the weakest of the four main characters. And the saddest part is he didn't have to be, because they could have given him some more depth. Use them to showcase the corrupt underbelly of Cybertron even before the twist reveal. His status as a comic relief makes him feel tacked on when there is a hidden story here that can be unraveled and tied into the themes of the film about deception and how it can break a person, or in this case, a bot. But I get it, there just wasn't enough in the runtime to give this character his moment to shine. As for his comedic jokes, it's hit or miss. They really run the Badassatron joke into the ground.
Actually, it's pronounced
Badassatron. Badassatron.
You like that, right?
Though there is a joke near the end that made me laugh because I forgot that it was in the trailers. The last remaining member of this ragtag group of rebels is Elita 1, the captain or commander of the mining group that D-16 and Orion Pax were a part of. She reluctantly joins the party after getting stranded with them on the surface of Cybertron, as they hunt down the location of the Primes and the Matrix of Leadership. And I'm going to say this right now. The way the journey gets started is a bit convoluted, as they magically pick up a piece of tech in the garbage that turns out to be an important thing. I'm not the biggest fan of that particular approach though. Yeah, I get it, runtime. Elita herself, though, is a stern leader, and it's clear that she doesn't have the patience for Orion's misplaced and naive optimism, though she really comes around by the halfway point of the film, giving Orion the boost that he needs to take the reins for a better tomorrow. My favorite character of the film has to go to Alpha Trion. He was only in the film for a short chunk, and a ton of his dialogue was mostly exposition, but dang it, he was so cool. He carried himself with such dignity and nobility that makes it clear that he is one of the last primes. He may be ancient, but that doesn't make him any less of a warrior. The way he went out though, oof. And that's my segue into talking about this motherfucker. Sorry, my blood pressure spiked there, because I'm about to talk about this huge piece of shit. Okay. Okay, for real this time. The antagonist of the film is Sentinel Prime. Ugh, Prime. Yeah, right. That's bad comedy. Okay, I'll be professional. Sentinel is the absolute worst. Like, what he did was essentially steal babies' organs and make them work in the most dangerous jobs on the entire planet. Yeah, that's not hyperbole, by the way. That's what he did. And that's only one of the worst things that he did. One, just one. He is by all but named the equivalent of the Fallen in this continuity, but he doesn't even deserve that name, alright? He isn't even cool enough for a title. He established the current state of Cybertron because he didn't know how the Matrix worked. Like, did he legit think he was worthy after killing so many bots? What a joke! He deserved the jazz treatment.
Want a piece of me? You want a piece? No! I want two!
The revelation of Sentinel's actions changes the film's course of track completely, shifting from a fetch quest into a political conspiracy, and the team endeavors to right his wrongs, though this is where the cracks start to show. D-16 and Orion's course of action start to deviate from each other, with the former wanting to demolish Sentinel and his lackeys, while the latter simply believes in reform and just punishment. There are a few things I want to nitpick on. The reveal of Sentinel's crimes to the public felt a bit too much like a water news moment.
I'll kidnap 1,000
T-Cogs.
before I let this company die, and I'll silence anyone who gets in my way!
It wouldn't be too much of an issue if there weren't already scenes in Arachnid's memory that already showed what needed to be said. And while D-16's anger towards Sentinel was justified, since D-16 really looked up to Sentinel at the start of the film, and it was stated that he was the very best miner of their group, so of course he'd feel the most betrayed if Elita wasn't in the group. I mean, the film makes it clear that Elita has been working her butt off for her current position, so I don't know. I think the point would have been driven home much better if D-16 and Elita's work positions were swapped. Also, I kind of wish that Orion and D-16 had one more conversation, just one more argument before the point of no return. I thought they were about to have that conversation, and they were about to before they got cut off by the Cybertronian High Guard. The Cybertronian High Guard, once proud warriors of the Primes, now reduced to savage gladiators biding their time and plotting Sentinel's demise. The entire scene sort of calls back to Megatron's original premise of being a gladiator, especially with his brief fight with Starscream. Although again, D-16's turn here, while warranted given Sentinel's war crimes, feels abrupt. Again, just one more scene with him and Orion and I think it'd be paced just a tiny bit better. Maybe that's what they were going for though? The tragedy of two best friends being pulled apart by forces greater than either of the two at work? It's just that it would have been much more painful if we see them actually try to talk it out beforehand. This lack of a final one-on-one confrontation or intervention makes it feel like the characters are just going through the motions, like this is what is meant to happen rather than it being a result of their own autonomy. Still, I understand, D-16 is not in the mood for any more speeches. Now is the time for action, and well, their actions get a large chunk of their faction caught by Sentinel. I'm going to say this, the confrontation between Sentinel and D-16 is perfection. Seriously, I was floored by how much they were willing to show in this kids' film. This just solidified how much care that the people involved in this film were willing to show with its characters. You have to watch this film to truly appreciate it. Just this scene alone warrants a rewatch. Orion and the remaining Cybertronian High Guards launch a coordinated attack against Sentinel, though not before Orion comes back for his friends in the mines. The scene where he just sits down and calmly explains to them the messed up stuff that he saw on the surface and how he comforts them and gives them the hope to stand up to their oppression, that's Optimus Prime right there. His ability to compel his fellow Cybertronians into action for a cause greater than themselves, even in the face of impossible odds, That's the mark of a real leader. This is the real power of a Prime. This is an Optimus Prime that I can see take down hordes of Decepticons and shoot some hoops by the end of the day. And I can even see him say this.
A booby trap that actually catches boobies. Boobies.
However, I will say that while Chris Hemsworth's performance as Orion Pax was excellent, his performance as Prime can be a bit off sometimes. When he digs into the deeper octaves of his voice, he kind of sounds like this.
Transform and roll out. No, you're not. Be taking our pod today, sir. Hitting the Godman. This is my voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but when you notice it, it really sounds a bit off and unnatural. I really didn't want to show that clip to you because I too am sick of seeing Chris Pratt in almost every other animated film these days, but I just had to show it to prove my point. On the other side of the story, Brian Tyree was kind of off as D-16, although I do understand why now because I didn't really know who Megatron was before he became Megatron, so the over-the-top reactions and panic kind of threw me off. But when D-16 gets a taste of power, whoo boy, Brian steps up his game. He's probably one of the best voice actors for Megatron. The conviction, the brutality, and the anger in his voice is the absolute best it's ever been in these Transformers movies. And that's a good thing because Megatron hasn't been in a film for many years now. And when he comes back, he's absolute peak. Oh my god. Megatron was the absolute MVP of this film. Some other noteworthy voices I heard were from Shockwave and Soundwave. They sound really, really good, especially Soundwave. Soundwave was voiced by John Bailey, you son of a bitch. Of course! He was great. I wish he had more lines though. Shockwave, while a bit sillier than his recent counterparts, was pretty fun. I wish he could have said logical at least once. Because there was a line in the film where he could have said it, and it would have punctuated how funny the scene was. Starscream, voiced by Steve Buscemi, was off to me. I can't explain it. All I can say is that I wasn't a fan of it. It just didn't give me Starscream vibes. Anyways, the movie's climax results in the fallout of D-16 and Orion Pax. The two undergo a transformation that changes the courses of their lives and the entirety of Cybertron forever. D-16's descent as the tyrannical Megatron drives the High Guard into absolute madness and frenzy, destroying any remaining monuments to Sentinel and every last one of his remaining allies. And from the darkness comes Cybertron's greatest light. Optimus Prime rises from the planet's core, blessed with the power of Primus, the matrix of leadership. And the battle concludes with Optimus's first triumph over the tyrant. He gives Megatron one last mercy and exiles him to the surface of Cybertron, never to return to Iacon. And yeah, that's how the movie concludes, with Optimus Prime sending one last message to the Quintessons. Yeah, I kind of forgot about them. In the grand scheme of things, they were kind of a nothing burger. It's just that there were more personal stakes at hand, rather than a conflict between the Cybertronians and this unknown alien faction. They were unknown to me since this is probably one of my first times encountering them in terms of Cybertronian lore. Again, I'm more of a surface level Transformers fan. And honestly, in the film, they just felt like a prop to explain Sentinel's actions, but I honestly think that they could have been written out of the film, you know? There were a ton of things that could have been expanded upon in this film. I've hinted at it before, but you can definitely feel that this movie somewhat suffered from its relatively short runtime. Not that it's horribly paced, mind you, it's just that the contents of the film were very dense. And while the central conflict between D-16, Orion, and Sentinel were explored well enough, I was still wanting just a tiny bit more. As I've said, some characters just didn't get enough attention, when it's clear that maybe they could have had more time in the spotlight, thus making the film a bit lacking. Still, as I've said, the film comes as close to perfect for this franchise, and there's just so many stories to tell in this new world. and I hope that this cast and crew get the chance to tell it. The animation of the film is excellent, and that should come to no one's surprise once again because this is by Industrial Light and Magic. And if I had a nickel for every time I had to talk about Industrial Light and Magic this year alone, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's saying something, right? The film's soundtrack was marvelous, and that should come to no one's surprise because this film was composed by Brian Tyler of Transformers Prime fame. So there are a few leitmotifs sprinkled in there which might be familiar to some of you. Speaking of which, there are Easter eggs sprinkled in throughout the film. I'm not the biggest Transformers lore nut, but there are some deep cuts here, so keep your eyes open. Please go see this film in the cinema if you haven't. I know it's animated, but I'll just tap the sign one more time.
Animation genre. It's not a genre. A Western is a genre. Animation is an art form, and it can do any genre.
If you can't afford to go see it in the cinemas, because let's face it, cinemas are expensive these days, go out and get some merchandise. Personally though, I'm saving up for these MDLXs. Since the Studio Series line for this movie isn't really hitting the right notes for me. The Sentinel figure looks great though. Man, September's been pretty fun for me, huh? We get 2 films about robots, and it's my birth month. Is this how it feels to get 2 birthday cakes? Because it's even better in my case. I don't even like cake. I just like robots. Well, that's all for me. And what did you think of this film? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See ya next time.